Hello, I'm Chris Boswell, Mayor of the City of Harlingen, and I wanted to visit with you a little bit today about how things are going here in the City of Harlingen and in our state with regard to the coronavirus pandemic. So today is April 22nd, 2020, and we know that throughout the state we have about 205,000 reported tests of COVID-19, and of those, 19,945 were positive. So that's about 10% of the total number that's been tested. And that's been fairly consistent throughout the entire month of testing. So about 10% of the cases continue to come back positive, and we know that we're not testing everyone. In Cameron County, while the number of cases testing positive have risen to 310, 116 of those tested have recovered. The rate at which the cases are doubling in the Cameron County has slowed significantly. Hospitalizations throughout the state for COVID-19 have been running at about 1,450 per day. That has remained steady and has not gone up, so that's a good sign. Hospitalizations related to COVID-19 in Harlingen also remain fairly steady, and there are about 13 COVID positive cases in the hospital today. We hope in Harlingen Hospital. So we hope that that trend continues, and we're going to be following it very, very closely. So what about reopening business? I think you've heard from the president, you've also heard from the governor, and we're talking about it here in Cameron County along with all of the mayors throughout. So the White House COVID-19 task force has set forth some guidelines last week that requires at each phase of opening a little bit at a time, requires that there be a 14-day downward trajectory of symptoms, of flu-like symptoms in your community or in your state. Number two, that there be a 14-day downward trajectory of cases being tested positive as a percentage of all of the cases tested that day, and those are to be trending down, and that we have adequate hospital space, and that the hospitalizations are going down or are leveling off. And so under phase one, if we've reached a 14-day downward trajectory and phase one were to be implemented, it would mean that sit-down dining, movie theaters, sporting venues, and places of worship could operate, but only under strict physical distancing protocols. Gyms could open with physical distancing protocols and sanitation protocols. Bars would remain closed in phase one. If your symptoms and your cases and your hospitalizations continue to go down for another 14 days, then you could enter phase two. That would mean that schools, organized youth activities like camps could reopen, bars could operate but under diminished standing room occupancy. And that symptoms, cases, and hospitalizations continue that downward trend for another 14 days, restrictions would be further relaxed at gyms, sit-down dining, movie theaters, and places of worship, and we would continue with limited physical distancing. So we're going to get some more guidance from Governor Abbott and his team, strike force that he formed last week, and we're going to see what their recommendations are this coming Monday, April 27th. He should be issuing another executive order which will give us further guidance that may look similar to these White House guidelines, where there has to be some continued decrease in COVID-19 cases and symptoms and hospitalizations, and then the ability to open certain types of businesses a little bit at a time in a phased-in approach. Cameron County also has a task force. I'm proud to serve on that task force along with Judge Eddie Trevino, talking about how we're going to implement phasing in these reopening protocols and standards as we try to get moving again and get people back to work. It's very sad that we have a number of people in our community who find themselves without food, maybe for the first time in their lives. Fortunately, we've got a lot of people who are stepping up to the plate to feed those who may be out of work or having trouble feeding their families. And so the RGV Food Bank today, along with our first responders as volunteers, distributed lots of food out at our Harlingen Soccer Complex. And that will continue next week on a couple of different days next week in our soccer complexes and our soccer complex. And also Way of the Cross Ministry on F Street is distributing food on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. So I urge you, if you're in need and you know of someone in need, to look for those distribution points, and they will provide some help. We thank all of the volunteers and everybody who's supporting these food bank projects. We also want to tell you about some other potentially good news for small businesses, and that is the implementation by the Harlingen City Commission and our Harlingen Economic Development Corporation of the Harlingen Helps Program, the Harlingen Emergency Loan Program. This is going to be for small businesses that were unable to or did not qualify to participate in the federal funding of SBA PPP loans, the payroll protection loans. And if you have a business that has less than 25 people, if you can show that you have a need, and you can receive up to $10,000 in a loan from our Economic Development Corporation at 0%. And $1 million has been set aside by our EDC and by the City Commission to help fund this program, and we hope that it will help our small businesses that are really struggling at this time. Finally, we want to thank everybody. Just thank each and every one of you for helping with social distancing or physical distancing, staying home, washing your hands, doing all those things. Seems to be working. It seems to have an effect of keeping these cases low, that our trend is going down. And as that continues, then maybe we can start to reopen and get people back to work, and we can restart the economy throughout the state and in our city. So thank you for doing that. But also we want to thank our healthcare workers, our first responders, and our grocers, and all of the people on the front lines. I've thanked the teachers and the students before, but I want to thank especially today our city employees, our Harlingen Waterworks employees, and everybody who works for a city throughout this region. They're working very, very hard. They're working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to make sure that every one of us continues to have the critical services that we need, like water and wastewater, police protection, fire protection, that our utilities are operating, that our streets are still smooth, that our garbage is picked up. Every one of those men and women who continue to work for us are working hard. They're out there potentially exposing themselves to the virus, and they are doing a marvelous job. So if you get a chance, thank them. If you drive by one of our city employees, honk your horn, say thank you, and let them know that we really appreciate what you're doing. We'll get through this, Harlingen Strong. We'll get through this together. Thank you.